don't have too many stories from the trip, but as most of you no doubt know, this trip to Bolivia was a long time coming. A very, 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 very long time coming. We pulled this team together in 2019, maybe 2018, I'm not sure anymore. Maybe even before that. We thought we were going in 2020, and of course it got shelved because of COVID. We thought we would end up disbanding, but we kept meeting. We stayed in touch with CBM, which of course is Canadian Baptist Ministries, which is the missions arm of our denomination, and they asked us to stay together. A couple of the original team members weren't able to stick with the team due to some life changes, but we got some new team members in their place. And I think overall that time it became for me not even so much about the time in Bolivia, but about the journey and the process. We have worked so hard to build and maintain a unified team across 4 cities and 2 continents to make sure that we had the funding in place before we left and would not still be fundraising after we came back, to stay prayerful and enthusiastic and motivated, not knowing when or if we were actually going to go or if we were just going to end up sending all our money. When we finally got our trip dates, for some of us, it was almost more relief than excitement. And yet, not even Matt had a baby about to be born. Rick ended up in the hospital 5 days before leaving. Nancy was wearing a knee brace. Lucas had the added expense of having to fly himself and his family to Canada first, as well as asking for time off from a brand new job. I got bursitis right before leaving. I don't even know what bursitis is. Everybody had something going on. It had just gotten really complicated, and it felt like we were constantly regrouping and reevaluating and reiterating why we were doing what we were doing. So CBM had us do a video and book series. We've been studying this together before, during, after the trip. This book is called Helping Without Hurting, and it addresses the penchant that the Western world has for jumping on the rich versus poor bandwagon and believing that people from developed countries can go to developing or underdeveloped countries and fix all their problems. It tries to educate people about the real meaning of poverty and how each of us is rich in some ways and poor in others. It talks about 4 foundational relationships that we have. So those are relationship with God, relationship with others, relationship with creation, and relationship with ourselves, and how sin in each of those relationships creates poverty in all of us. Poverty of spiritual intimacy, poverty of community, poverty of stewardship, and poverty of being. So going on a mission trip isn't, or at least it shouldn't be, about feeling superior or thinking that we are bringing something to a situation that isn't already there. It's about connecting, it's about broadening perspective and coming alongside other people and bringing the message to others that they are seen, they are heard, they are valued, and that God is at work in their lives. Going on this trip for me was not about any kind of spiritual high or any idea that I was going to help anybody in any life-changing kind of way. I have spent quite a bit of time on what we used to call the foreign mission field. I have been to Bolivia before, and I have also been one of the missionaries on the ground who has hosted short-term missions teams. For me, this trip was about trying to be an encouragement, not only to the people in Bolivia, but more importantly to the people on our own team. As the leader of the 2012 Bolivia team from this church, I have been committed over these recent years to mentoring Matt in his role as the 2024 team leader. And the condition that he placed on that relationship was that I actually be on the team and go on the trip. We were not anticipating the length of time it was going to take me to fulfill that, but maybe God had his hand in that. Well, I know God had his hand in that as well, because we were able to develop relationships just amongst team members that wouldn't have happened any other way. I did get a bit old in the meantime, however, for some of the things that you're seeing on the videos. My extended family has supported me through a lot of mission-related endeavors, so having my brother, my sister-in-law, and my son-in-law on the trip was really huge for me. It was also a chance for me to come alongside them and hopefully encourage them on their first international trips, but also to give them a glimpse of what I've been up to all these years. Sort of passing on the torch, I guess. This trip had some very touching moments. I saw some new things, I met some new people, I reconnected with a couple of people from the 2012 trip, which was really cool. Learned some new things, had some exciting moments, not the least of which was the scorpion in Michelle's and my room. That was very exciting. In fact, Michelle, I don't know what was going on there, but she saw it first, and in her moment of panic, she screamed, "Desiree!" And I went, what? So that was an exciting moment. Yeah. Some hard times too on this trip, but it was a good trip. It was a great trip. It was a really great trip. It was so amazing to see what God is doing and how he is showing himself to be faithful all around the world in situations that we can't even imagine. This time, oddly enough, a lot of people have been asking me a question that I've never been asked after any of the other trips I've been on. People are asking me, would I go again? I don't know if that is being provoked by the scorpion incident or the fact that we were sent to such a remote area for a few days or because our flight got canceled and I slept on the floor of the Bogota airport. It's not really a question of whether or not I would go again. It's really a question of whether or not I should go again. We never know what God is going to call us to do. One of the things I realized early on in my international mission travel many years ago is that if you can go far away from home and talk to people about Jesus, then you can also stay close to home and talk to people about Jesus. It's just riskier staying home because people know you better and they don't have any illusions about who you are. The well-known missionary Hudson Taylor said, "Go, send, or disobey." A trip like this is not about the 10 people on the team who went on the trip. It's about the church. When we asked CBM if we should disband, they said if they lose the team, they lose the church. So I think we should keep that in mind as a congregation. You don't have to go, but you can still come alongside. And I'm telling you this after the fact, so you can't come back and say I'm trying to get more money out of you. Although I do have that barbecue sauce for sale. So if you have kind of come to this thinking that missions trips are like vacations, or if you think that you're not part of or that you have no responsibility for the outreach that this church does, whether it's halfway around the world or across the street, I really want to encourage you to think about this some more and to pray about it seriously. Talk to more people who've been on trips or who are going on trips. Find out what their motivation is. Find out what they learned. Find out what they're hoping to learn or accomplish. The Great Commission in Matthew 28 says to go and make disciples of all nations. Spreading the gospel and supporting others who are doing it is really the whole point. It's everything that we as the whole church are about. The church is the real team. So I'm really grateful to have gone on this trip. I did sort of plaster a thatched roof house, sort of. I bounced around in that truck for hours every day. I sang some songs, I did the puppet shows, I read with little kids, I ate alligator. And rice and plantain, and rice and plantain, and rice and plantain. I drank some really good coffee. I drank some drinks made from things I couldn't pronounce and can't remember. I muddled my way through some conversations in Spanish. I didn't flush my toilet paper. I spent days and days in the Bogota airport. I met some really great, fun people. I slept like a rock in some strange beds. And it was amazing. It was really amazing. God is doing amazing things in Bolivia. He's also doing amazing things here. So maybe next time it'll be your turn to go and my turn to stay home. Or maybe not. Point is, the mission never changes for any of us, wherever and whenever we are called. It's just coming alongside and being who God is calling us to be. So that's what I learned. Again.
Good afternoon. So I went to Bolivia, obviously, and I went in 2012 as well. I had the fortunate experience to go before, so I kind of knew at least somewhat of what to expect as we went. Obviously, though, you can never fully prepare for something like this because there's really a lot of eye-opening experiences when you go to places like this and you see the things that we saw, especially in these rural areas that we went to. So that was a bit of a new experience going somewhere that rural. which I really enjoyed. Some of my favorite moments were actually just being on the back of the truck, even though my butt really, really hurt. It was really cool just to kind of see the scenery and experience God's creation in a different perspective and a different part of the world. And to try and soak all that in is pretty overwhelming sometimes, but it was very, very cool. As we went to these rural areas, it gave me lots of time to think and to try to kind of bring myself to the perspective of some of the Bolivian people that live there. When we went to the first house that we worked on, I worked on house number 2, and that was that family with that young little boy. It was the young couple. I think they're like 17 or 18 years old, and they have a 1-year-old there with them. So, very young couple. When we first got there, though, it was very awkward and very uncomfortable, and especially for me. That's what it felt like for me. I mean, obviously there's a language barrier and things like that, so there's awkward moments no matter what happened, but I don't know, it felt really weird just walking into somebody's house that I didn't even speak their same language as them, and just being like, hey, I'm gonna do some work now. All right. And the vibe that you get from the people that live there too, it felt very awkward, especially the first day. I didn't know what to say. I knew how to say some greetings and stuff in Spanish, but like even if I did know how to speak Spanish, I still wouldn't have known what to say because like it was it felt very intrusive, right? Like, and I kind of got that feeling from the family that we're just like, we came from Canada and we're just waltzing into your house. And I just tried to put myself in their shoes and like, how would I feel if that was people just walking into my house and being like, hey, you obviously need help, let's plaster your walls. As a dad, I wouldn't feel very good about that. I'd feel like basically they're telling me I can't provide for my family. And as a dad, that's kind of, well, that can be hurtful for sure. So yeah, the first day that we were working on that house, I felt very disheartened about it, obviously uncomfortable, and I remember driving back and just thinking about like, oh man, this is really stupid. Like, what am I doing with this? Because I don't know. I just felt like I couldn't connect with the family there. We couldn't, and it was really hard. Like, and that was the only thing I could think about that whole first day. And so I felt very disheartened going into it. The second day, we did only like a little bit of work throughout that day. Started to get a little bit better, but then I remember on the third day, I just remember their little son, Jonathan, he was very shy with us, especially at the beginning too. But later on, he started just coming in and helping us, and then so did the mom. And it just, I don't know, it's like I didn't really do anything in particular, but it just I just felt this connection that was really, really cool. And I started Jonathan came in and he really loved the plaster, right? The bucket of plaster. And you're supposed to let it sit and whatever. And I was just like, whatever, we can just play with it. So he stuck his hand in there and he started playing with the plaster. And then I just had some really cool moments like that. And I suddenly started to feel that connection. And it didn't feel like I'm some random guy from Canada anymore. It felt more meaningful. And yeah, and then he wanted to start helping. And then the mom came in and she started helping too, which she did not do on the first day at all, but she was very willing to once we were there for a couple days. And as soon as I started feeling that connection, it was almost another thing. It's like, oh, now this is our last day too. But it really put a lot of things into perspective for me in that regard, because I was very sad to leave after we had to leave. The first day, all I did was want to leave. All I wanted to do was leave on the first day, but the third day, I did not want to leave. And yeah, that was really cool on how that changed for me for those few days that we were there at that house. And yeah, and it felt like whenever I talked to the family at the end, it felt like I could feel some sort of connection with them. They were smiling at me now. They weren't smiling at me the first day. That went a long way. It didn't feel like there was a language barrier anymore. I just felt that connection, and I thought that was very cool. And yeah, trying to put myself into someone else's shoes is kind of a lot. It can be a little bit overwhelming, but It was a very rewarding experience in that regard. Didn't really know what to expect. I didn't think I would experience that to that extent this time, but I definitely did. And I really obviously just want to go back again because it was very cool. But that was definitely the biggest highlight for me. Obviously, there was lots of other cool things that happened, like getting our flights canceled, but yeah, we don't have time for all that. So, but yeah, that was my experience.
All
So,
right, thanks. Emelina. Joel next? Well, but, okay, Mom can do hers later. Joel doesn't live here, so. Sounds good. Okay, Joel's gonna wrap it up, and then Emelina and Michelle will share, and Lexi will share it. I remembered Lexi this time. So Joel, if you want to wrap it up, go for it.
Are you able to go to the beginning of the video? All right. So one of the things going in is that I was told, oh, it's not going to be too bad. It's their winter, so you don't have to worry about being too hot. And everyone who was there before telling me, oh, it was fine. We're in jeans and a shirt, and we weren't roasting. So that wasn't true for the area we were at. When they went before, they were about like 10, like a little village about 10 minutes outside of like one of the cities, and it wasn't too far. You can play the video again. And in this case, no, it was anywhere from plus 26, 27 to plus 36, 37. And you can see how it's a bit toasty and barren and arid out there. It was because it was roasting. So, yeah. That was one of the things that I definitely realized is, oh boy, I'm going to be trying to get in the shade as much as possible. But yeah, for the people who lived there, though, they were acclimatized, and some of them were wearing sweaters, which made me laugh. It is winter. Yeah, one of the things I noticed, in addition to the National Geographic level of travel we had to take to get to the homes that we worked on, was that it was interesting to go into a situation where it wasn't the Canadians or Americans come in, do everything, say, hey, we fixed it, and then leave. This was, we were partnering with like churches and organizations of groups in Bolivia that had the process ongoing, and we were there and helping and doing what we can to make it better. But when we leave, it still goes on, and then they get other help. So it wasn't necessarily us coming in and saying, hey, we're doing everything for you. It was us coming in and saying, hey, you guys are already working on this. We're going to help how we can and kind of give you encouragement and such to continue doing it, which I really found super, super great. Another thing I found interesting is that in the urban centers, there was a lot of cultural similarities and like shared experiences and stuff between some of the Bolivian volunteers and us, including like one girl kept showing us memes and anime references and saying, hey, do you like this? Hey, remember One Piece? Which was quite funny. And for them going out to these locations, it was culture shock to them as well, which I found kind of interesting. So even in their own country, there was areas that just didn't expect, and it was quite a change to what they were used to. What else? Yeah, I originally came because I started dating Emelina, and every time there was a Bolivia meeting, about 6 to 8 months before the trip, she would always be in Saskatoon visiting me and be like, oh, hey, there's a Bolivia meeting. Do you mind if I bring my laptop and I just have the meeting in your kitchen? I was like, okay, and every time there was a meeting, I was invited. And then eventually they're like, hey, Joel, do you want to come? And I was like, maybe. What are we doing? Where are we going? I know nothing about this. And then eventually I was roped in. Otherwise, it was really good. I had no clue what I was in for. We were told originally that there's no laundry service. You have to bring enough clothes for like over 2 weeks of it's going to be either plus 16 or plus 36. It's either going to be raining or super hot. And you can't wash your clothes, so you have to bring everything. So suitcases were packed. And yeah, I'm glad I did. It was definitely quite the experience, and it was interesting to see how God and the different ministries, churches, and stuff down there were operating. And yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you very much. All right. Appreciate that, Joel. All right, so.